Hello, greetings, and welcome to the Distinguished Artist Series presented by the James Renwick Alliance for Craft, presenting Geoffrey Bowton and Josh Simpson. My name is Jamie Ann Jacobin, Executive Director of the James Renwick Alliance for Craft. We're an organization dedicated to fostering public appreciation, education, and connoisseurship of American craft. Today, you're in store for a treat as we hear from two amazing glass artists in what should be a wonderful afternoon of insightful differences in working with glass. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comment section below or the Q&A box. Rebecca Ravenel, our president-elect and chair of the Distinguished Artist Series, will now be introducing these artists. Rebecca?
Thank you, Jamie Ann. Welcome. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Thank you to our co-host for these lectures, the American University Museum at the Katzen Art Center. We have a special format for this season in honor of JRA Craft's 40th anniversary and the 25th anniversary of the Center for Craft in Asheville. We've partnered to present programming to celebrate our past, present, and future in craft. We brought back 4 of our favorite artists from past programs. These are our encore artists. And we asked them to pick a partner from among the Center for Craft's recent Wingate Lamar Fellows who are in the early part of their careers. And these are our emerging artists. Each pair of encore and emerging artists will present a Saturday virtual studio visit and a Sunday online artist talk in 4 separate weekends through June. Our intention was to spark some interesting conversations between these artists about materiality, process, access, community, a range of topics that pertain to the craft field. We're very pleased today to present 2 wonderful glass artists, Josh Simpson and Geoffrey Bowton. Geoffrey Bowton utilizes glass and mixed media and the power of craft to provide insight, support, and representation of the military veteran community. He enjoys using materials with contradictory characteristics, which highlights tension and sparks conversation about identity, trauma, damage, repair, and healing. These skills, combined with creative mold making and pâte de verre casting, transform materials into a visual landscape of the soldier's life. Geoffrey's cast pieces are muted in tone, but speak volumes with their gritty narrative of the lasting devastation of war. Considering the current situation in Ukraine, Geoffrey's pieces seem particularly powerful just now. Josh Simpson is joining us from his home in the hills of Western Massachusetts, where he's enjoying his 50th year of being a studio glass artist. Josh is best known for his beautifully crafted planets and his strikingly colorful swirled glass. What people may not know about Josh is his tremendous care and support for the craft community. He's a founder of the Craft Emergency Relief Fund, which helps artists who have lost studios and who are unable to work for various reasons. He co-founded Snow Farm, a residential craft school. He served on boards and awards committees of numerous organizations. He's taught widely, ensuring the growth of the craft field and helping other artists pursue the kind of career that he's been able to sustain for half a century. Josh is the epitome of the special focus we have this season to showcase how established, successful artists with long histories are helping to create and ensure the future of craft too. Thanks, Josh. Take it away.
So I'm going to try to share my screen with you, and hopefully I push the right buttons. Okay, I hope you can see that. I guess I'll just start by saying that I sometimes wonder what it is about glass that it's held my singular and undivided attention for 50 years. I wonder if it's the heat or the color, the chemistry, the complexity, or just the challenge to make anything at all from a 2000 degree molten and uncooperative liquid. Glass can have an unbelievable range of color. It can transmit and bend and reflect, magnify and enhance the light around it. It is virtually the only material whose shadows and even edges can have vibrant color. This is one of my plates in sunlight. Along with making compelling objects, some other things I love about working with glass are that it requires a bunch of different skills. Skill sets from welding to working with machine tools and steel, to plumbing and combustion engineering, to electrical and carpentry work, to high temperature chemistry, which I've spent many years trying to understand and master. I've built and designed all my furnaces and many of the tools and machines that I use every day completely from scratch. I always loved ceramics as a kid and built a pottery kiln when I was a senior in high school. That's me on the right with my youngest brother, Kim. But I was always the most fascinated with the mystery of glazes, which of course are actually glass, and how those glazes made my pot shiny or dull or lustrous and colorful. To make a long story short, in late 1971, with one required course left to graduate, I dropped out of Hamilton College in upstate New York and just barely missed the military draft that year. Knowing that I was not headed for Vietnam allowed me to rent 50 acres of land in northern Vermont for $22.50 a month. I bought some Dacron sail canvas and sewed a teepee to live in, and with two friends began to construct a ramshackle studio using 100% recycled, and actually they were just junk building materials. I also built the most rudimentary glass furnace imaginable, but the thing worked. My first attempts at glassmaking were incredibly crude, but of course I thought I was doing great. I was 21 years old. This was my idea of a perfectly matched set of ruby wine goblets. I even built a furnace on a boat trailer and started to travel to craft shows, which along with galleries was the primary way that I sold my glass for many years. Along with my focus of trying to make or get better at making goblets, I began experimenting, learning to make my own colors. It was probably my complete lack of knowledge that actually helped when I began melting silver and other metallic oxides in my glass. With no preconceived notions, I discovered the vibrant blue colors and the dendritic patterns that my work is now known for, work that I call New Mexico glass. My goblets continued to improve and were chosen by First Lady Rosalynn Carter to be used at a White House luncheon. And that same year, they were included in a show at the Corning Museum of Glass and then featured in a Life magazine article. It's interesting here to note that the others featured in the article are, from left to right, Tom Patty, Marvin Lepofsky, let me see if I can point that out, Marvin Lepofsky, Harvey Littleton, Dominic Labino, and Dale Chihuly over here on the right. We were all just beginners. We were just learning how to do this. Amazingly, goblets started to sell, and I have to tell one story. I was at the post office one Saturday morning when a guy came up to me and told me of the evening before that he'd spent with his friends. He and his guests had been using my goblets, and at some point in the night, they realized they were not drinking from glasses at all, but were drinking wine from the sky. I've always wondered how much wine they'd had that night, but at that moment, it dawned on me that my glass could transcend its utilitarian function and maybe come to represent something much more profound in the viewer. Those beginning sales made it possible for me to start a search for the largest barn I could find for the least amount of money. And this old dairy barn in Western Massachusetts that I still use as my studio today also came with a house to live in. My first week in town, a local teacher dropped by to ask if I'd be willing to demonstrate glassmaking to all the 8th graders in the county. I readily agreed, not realizing there were actually zillions of 8th graders. It turned out that I had inadvertently agreed to having a bunch of unruly kids in my studio every Wednesday afternoon for months and months. Have you ever met an 8th grader? These are people who will suffer no boredom in their lives whatsoever. They were not interested in goblets, vases, bowls, or paperweights, but they loved it when I made striped or cat's eye marbles. Then one night before the next day's demonstration, I thought about the Apollo astronauts and this iconic photo that Bill Anders took of our Earth. And this photo made me think about how Neil Armstrong observed that he could cover the Earth with his outstretched thumb. And so the next day I began to make marbles that were meant to be planets. I hope these little spheres would give kids something more to think about than the mechanics of glass making. Our Earth, that seems so vast and limitless, is in fact just like a little blue marble floating in the black void of space. In some ways, this was the beginning of my fascination with space, astrophysics, and cosmology as inspiration for my work. Planets are simple objects, just a sphere, but they're visually compelling and can easily transcend the normal boundaries of age, gender, language, nationality, religion, ethnicity, or perhaps even species. Though they were just made for kids, planets were the first thing that was truly my own idea. And over time, they got to be bigger and more complex. And along the way, have given me the impetus to learn every conceivable glass technique to use in my own new ways and convey my own new concepts. These imaginary worlds have been exhibited in galleries and museums and have allowed me to travel and have amazing experiences around the world. This is a photo of the Josh Simpson Sphere Museum when it was located in Kanazawa, Japan. It's now in a high-rise in Tokyo. In my experience, I have found that the glass gods are malevolent and evil. There are hundreds of steps to making even the simplest object, and just a single misstep can result in disaster. This planet should have cooled for many weeks, but it exploded after just 20 minutes when there was a momentary power fluctuation that confused its electronics. Beyond all the technical hurdles, the biggest challenge for me is to use this material to convey my own sense of curiosity, exploration, and wonder to the viewer. I'm incredibly fortunate to live in a part of the country where there's almost no light pollution at night. This photo of Comet Neowise was taken from our backyard by my youngest son a couple of summers ago. The last thing I do every evening and the first thing I do before dawn in the morning is to walk to my studio to check on my furnaces. I'm constantly amazed by the night sky, spectacular auroras, the magenta light just before dawn, or lightning down the valley. Of course, these things can't help but be articulated in my work. This is my New Mexico glass, meant to evoke my idea of a perfect starry night. But that blue color also reflects some of the awe I felt when I was given permission by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to be suspended in a harness above a 60-foot deep pool of barium-moderated water with a glow of Cherenkov radiation emanating from spent fuel and way down at the bottom of the pit. Trying to replicate that blue color of Cherenkov radiation has been one of my goals. That same glass color that I call New Mexico can remind me of a Hubble telescope image of the birth of stars. I owe a huge debt to my wife, Katie Coleman, for her chosen career as a scientist, Air Force colonel, explorer, and NASA astronaut. Just to keep up, I've become a scuba diver and a pilot. I love exploring the vibrant minutiae of coral reefs and ocean, or being able to follow a river or the stratigraphy of hills and mountains for hundreds of miles in my plane. Katie and her NASA crew launched the Chandra X-ray telescope in 1999. It's the sister to Hubble, but looks at energetic phenomena like neutron stars and pulsars. There are theories and concepts in science, astronomy, and cosmology that I try to conceptualize in my glass. Gravitational lensing and the warping of space-time, black hole singularities, how stars are born, dark matter, dark energy, energetic phenomenon like quasars, and how the universe is likely to end are all fascinating to me. Listening to what friends tell me that they see in my glass has made me realize that how my glass reveals itself to you is exactly how it's supposed to be. This is Katie on the space station with some of the planets that she brought there. As an astronaut, you're allowed to bring a few things with you, provided they fit in a sandwich bag and have weight restrictions. But my glass is successful if the viewer finds it intriguing and is compelled to explore more, or if it evokes any of the wonder I find in our world, the oceans, or the universe around us. There's so much more. There's so much more to explore in glass. Thank you. I'm going to try to stop sharing my screen. And so that's what I have. I don't know if everybody's asleep still or
Not sleeping at all.
it's time to wake up.
Wonderful. That was really wonderful. And there's a few questions in the chat, and we're going to ask all the questions at the very end. But Josh, thank you so much. That was really great. I'm going to hop right into Geoffrey's video that he has to share with us, and then he's going to be joining us from the studio, and then we'll be asking all of these questions at the end. So if you have other questions for Josh, please go ahead and you can ask them in the chat, or you can call out at the end of the program, because there was even some things that I had never seen before, Josh, in your process. That was very intriguing. So thank you. And I'm going to share my screen, play this video now.
I came here to the beach to find a way to escape. I've been thinking about a decade of my life, looking back to where it all started for me. And the way I found a connection to being out in nature was a way that helped me disconnect from myself. It gave me an opportunity to see differently, think differently, and focus on a new way of mental health. Finding an evocative object really allows me to think about the contents of what it is and where it came from. I've been working in glass since 2016. I had an opportunity to attend a summer studies program with Oregon College of Art and Craft, and this introduced me to glass. It was a very wonderful experience, being out in nature and connecting and exploring. 2 years later, I attend Penland School of Craft on a student scholarship, learning pâte verre from the glass master Elise Alumne. I noticed that pâte verre wasn't a popular process, so that's what drew my interest. Since then, I've been incorporating those techniques into my studies. After graduation, I started to push the idea of pâte verre and its possibilities further into sculptural objects about my military experiences. Previously in my military thought, those types of objects were not only evocative, but they brought me into the dark corners, those dark areas of mental health and access to the realities of war. I connect to those areas of thought and memory because of the work, and it takes me to a mental space to focus and kind of hyper-focus on those difficult areas that not really many people want to access. Digging through past memories that were related to military, it kept me in a dark place, thinking about not only what I experienced, but what others went through and experienced. The idea of packing away and pushing problems into these dark areas, firing them in the kiln, taking a mold and divesting out and exposing this piece of glass. Like, that whole entire process allows me to manifest those mental health spaces, burn them away, put those memories to rest, and reinvigorate the work with something new. After graduation in 2019, I was working with Center for Craft on the Wingate Lamar Fellowship, and I had a lot of excitement moving forward into the future, progressing my academics into the graduate space, earning a degree at Virginia Commonwealth University. We were dealing with a pandemic, and I was also having difficulty with my medical health program in the VA. So both of those things put a wedge in the opportunity of moving into my master's program. That put me into a place of depression where I had no hope for my future. And the longer the pandemic kept going, the further I fell into the idea that art was over for me. This new work is getting me out into nature and finding objects that create an intangible way of thinking. I don't know what it is yet. I'm trying to pull out these images, these feelings from a new object, and I have to think about what that looks like beyond the first impression. So I like to take the work and think about it, recontextualize these ideas over and over again, because the more I start to exclusively understand this new kind of object that's talking about positivity, enjoyment, the healthy parts of life, these are newfound experiences that really excite me into taking the hard parts and making them refreshing. I love working with glass because it's different than the materials I've worked with throughout my life. There's a lot of opportunity with color, ways to move and make with the material. Metal's very difficult to be creative with originally in comparison to glass in my mind. So it allows me a platform to be more creative than I have been. The skills are very transferable to glass from sheet metal. The hammering, the grinding, they're very similar, but just different materials and different ways of using the tool. The way it looks, the way it's used, right? The metal is very robust, it's industrial. You get the idea of structure, invincibility, permanent. For me, the idea of those things resonate, but it doesn't give me the ability to create. When I use glass, it becomes a sense of fragility, supporting a narrative that's fragile. So metal doesn't allow that opportunity for me to do those things. And I connect with glass because it helps me survive. It helps me understand the balance between strong and rigid and also soft and gentle. There's this juxtaposition that does happen for me that I'm learning how to exploit within my work. The thing that connects me most to art is working with the people around me. They're like people I've never met before, and they've embraced me in the community, and I feel a part of them more than I feel a part of anything else now. My name is Geoffrey Bowton, and I'm a glass artist and sculptor.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today and taking a journey with me. Looking back at some past events of mine, I plan to share an exclusive look from on the ground while I was serving as a sergeant in the United States Army for the 5th Battalion, 20th Infantry, stationed just 2 hours north of where I live. A writer's job is to tell the truth. His statement of fidelity to the truth should be so high that in his invention, out of his experience, should produce a truer account than anything factual can be, by Ernest Hemingway, Men at War, 1942. I joined the Army after 15 years of service, working for Portland's local sheet metal union. It was in 2008, in the recession, I decided to finally serve. The timing was right. I served with many great people who became soldiers of amazing jobs. These guys here, the 520 regulars, showed love for family, love for countrymen, and love for upholding the peace. We lived while serving in Afghanistan. My team was to move within the outskirts of Kandahar city to meet with tribal leaders, conducting ceremonies referred to as Ashura, focused on business over tea, with agreements to help preserve the civilian communities, defeat the enemy, and eradicate the drug fields, known to be financially supporting terrorism. We were there building connections, helping those in need, and serving for others. The original Taliban natives are known to have existed here in Kandahar, the Zaria district, a ridden land to the Soviet-Afghan war during the 1980s. Improvised explosive devices, or IEDs, were found all throughout the battlefield. In the beginning, this became one of my responsibilities, to learn new enemy tactics about IEDs while visiting the Central Command in Afghanistan, report back to our base after just 3 days of classes, then implement those counter IED tactics with the command group and our battalion. What made us feel normal, what made us connect, knowing we could make a difference for those in the fight, the people who lived in Afghanistan, a form of cultivating relationships, something that kept our spirits alive. To escape constant anxieties of the battle space, I volunteered my construction skills to improve the community and work together, making the hasty environment that we lived in feel more like home, a place of resting our mental health, disconnecting. Seen here, the battalion unit crest and colors, logos and banners, things I made to disconnect, like a barber's chair, modified from a destroyed Humvee, equipped with all the relatable comforts, wide extended wooden armrests. For people who came into the finance department, they could get a haircut, tell stories, sign their names on the armrest, have a little bit of fun. I was also inspired by the vehicles we drove. Seen in the upper left, I contrived a mixed media table for our Lieutenant Colonel. In 2019, while working towards my undergraduate degree at Oregon College of Art and Craft, I discovered inspiration while studying in the classroom about art and war. Wilhelm Heinrich Otto Dix, a German painter and printmaker who cultivated his life post-World War I, the exposure to war resonated within. He was subjected to life in the trenches as a machine gunner. His dreams became recurring nightmares, problems soldiers commonly suffered post-war. Dix had experienced both death and the casualties of war firsthand. He denounced the atrocities of war in both raw and realistic images, a collection of symbolic creations of what he witnessed. Few can be linked to historical events and political disasters like Dix. He was more than just the artist. He was a soldier that survived the wars. During the month of November in 2018, the school curated its first trench art exhibit, a 100th year anniversary to the end of World War I. The conflict, memory, and personal experiences of soldiers all take form in objects, often using materials directly related to the war, such as shell casings of brass, steel scrap, munitions. The found object played an important role for the individual to express in a time of war. I discovered a book called Trench Art, A Brief History and Guide by Nicholas J. Saunders. He explained that trench art is one of rare and historical events, a mass collection of objects, unique and extraordinary. Saunders believes that because of the humble nature of soldiers, their work has largely been overlooked, ignored, and even dismissed. Three cups of tea, the figurative language, a teapot, describing the Afghan ceremonial traditions of trust, buy, hire. Many times in country, the regulars took part in such tradition. I wanted to cultivate those memories by conceptualizing a mid-century teapot, to remember, to isolate a learned and lived experience. Seen here, Afghan soldiers and partners in war, sharing the traditions. Here with the command group detail the celebratory 3 cups of tea. Meanwhile, Lucky, our medic, covers down and gets tea to our guy, Addy, posting security on the big gun. Afghanistan trench art navigates through visual landscapes of the battlefield, using things that soldiers carried or worn during that time, translating the physical object as something both less specific and more explicit. In this work, I'm abstracting the internal damages inside my body to the surface of the uniform, exposing, fractured, overuse, the orange-like spine twisting and shifting, yes, painful. Seen on the right, in the hip detail, I'm referring to a sustainment injury discovered later as a civilian, jumping, impacting, splintering, shattering, cracked bones. Seen here on the bottom right, the heavy light essential infantry things we carried, ranging from approximately 50 to 100 pounds, depending on the job that you had, dictated the weight you carried. Here's a look at some of the mountains in the Kandahar region, one of the oldest known human settlements in history, where people such as Alexander the Great, known to have lived and fought here in the same region, to have established the old foundational Kandahar. Seen here in action, Sergeant Brown holding himself entirely still and balancing core strength with approximately 100 pounds on the low spine, while gripping, focusing, concentrating, enduring. So in this image from the left, that's Connor, Doc, AKA Lucky, Justin, Matt, Nick, and me, Bowton, behind the camera, outside our home tent, playing cards on the back of the deck project. And yes, our creepy friend, who had many names, never could seem to play his cards just right. We were here always chasing each other in the shadows of the day. The battlefield introduces unimaginable conflicts that bleed over into the lives of veterans. I believe art provides foundational growth, a way to access the dark spaces and repair cracks deep within the mind, reaching beyond the systematical mental health care known as the VA. Intangible burdens of mental weight, coupled by physical exasperation, with a sense of overwhelming mental instabilities, scars that soldiers drag behind them, not carry. According to a news update by Alan Taylor of The Atlantic, on July 3rd, 2012, the number of coalition soldiers killed in Afghanistan in the month of June amounted to 39 in total, estimating over 3,000 lost to combat. The Atlantic also reports roughly every 30 hours, one death would happen since the invasion back in October 2001. It became our team, the command group, who first was in direct contact from the enemy in our area of operations. Targeted early, we were nearly becoming a mass casualty. The generative fighting intelligence force on the ground, the battalion command, from a hasty ambush in multiple directions. The sounds of zips, whips, cracks flew all around. It was a Russian PKM to our feet, past our bodies, over our heads. We were walking directly into a coordinated attack, sustaining the first casualty of war, a partner in Afghan soldier, who suffered a scalp abrasion to his skull, victim from one of the rounds. Thanks to Lucky for some on-the-job training day one, our fighting season begins. I created this helmet after my undergraduate when thinking about my life in theater. Just 3 days after attending the leader's IED course and becoming the master trainer for our battalion. That specific training saved my own life, just inches away from detonating an insurgent IED, as we led VIP personnel on a dismount walk to a local's farmhouse. Avoiding major catastrophe, that single experience could have changed the course of my and others' physical and mental lives forever. The very up-close exposure and experience in the country for the 520 soldiers out there, discovering bombs in the most horrific, unimaginable way. 10 years and 12 days ago, it is today, with all of you, something I am letting go of. The guilt, when anyone was injured, maimed, or killed, it was about extreme empathy. I asked myself, was the training not sufficient? Did we need more time? Only just 3 days? I found bombs from the training. I didn't get hurt. But did I fail the others? These questions harvest deep inside of my heart and mind. Shook me for years, still does. So in making in the studios, I was thinking about what an IED would have felt like exploding up through my body, mentally digging further into the trenches, making the work, writing about the work, attempting to understand, a grueling process. Contagion represents a metaphorical disease spread by close contact. Due to the ravages of active duty deployment, extreme anxieties, overwhelming fears, the threat of death, injury to others, loss of others. Countless physical and emotional effects of this experience could result in the infectious metaphorical disease contagion, eating away at the mind. We Are Not the Dead was a Scottish soldier study conducted before, during, and after combat-related incidents in Afghanistan, where the individual, male or female, shared their experience through extended discussions and interviews. This triptych panel contagion reflects the pain, struggle, burden, and mental weight of people who decide to serve their country and slowly discover the aftermath of war. Now, research gained from these lived experiences can operate as a positive reflection for veterans' mental health and for people to reconcile and to move on from past hardships. This was something I had created for myself and also decided to start asking others if they were infected in any way. We Are Not the Dead served as the first tangible moment confirming my thoughts and feelings. Contagion effect, emerging veteran voices post-deployment. A series of hard-lived lessons by using the evocative object. This helmet belongs to a friend of mine. We met up a few years ago, shared Army stories over lunch, talked about life, hope, and encouraged one another, uplifting each other. A real cherishable moment created by the both of us and worthy of sharing with everyone today. What we both learned, that time can be lost. That time is everything, and not to waste time. My first discovery in expanding Patever and creating a series of works came one day when I was digging through duffel bags for source materials, searching for referential objects, information that instigated a larger response. As I continued to reach further down the Army rabbit hole, the green duffel bag, I was starting to produce a truer content about the memories, the old memories, realizing the capabilities of what the evocative object was doing for me. The Pativer mold vessel is a two-part structure fabricated to withstand high heat environments during a kiln firing process, a hot, turbulent space. I make special considerations with the sifting, water brushing, placement, packing, and tamponing of glass powders and glass shards. The destruction to oneself seems classified, unknown, unable to access. Our team knows of suicide firsthand and suffered loss 5 months before deployment, losing our guy, Gilbert. We never had the chance to see him grow as John. He was the baby of the bunch, little brother. I made this work by using a handgun. Once the round shattered the glass, I started to think of the broken pieces, the need to fix them, the repair to them, the heal to the pieces. All we needed was clarity. What I thought about while repairing the glass, the military has an unseen, undisclosed problem that still lingers today, remaining very much in our shadows: suicide. Carrying America's faith and honor against our enemies. I was asked, why do I make? To survive. Shaking the cobwebs out and getting back to the work in the studios, I ended up thinking about here, where it all started for me. I worked with a group of dream seekers, just like me. What stood out the most was feeling disconnected from the previous hypervigilant world and finding a sense of joy with purpose. Glass became infectious within me. The idea of exploring landscapes influenced change within my craft. The sublime, powerful sets of mixed emotions, becoming influential and transforming in thought, similar to this rust. To some people, rust is a problem. To others, rust is beautiful. What I realized was to simply let go, become like rust. Either way, you're adaptable and you're available. This is where I ended up going when getting lost, here to Pacific City. I found wood as something of interest, like the rust I found in Scotland. I decided to let go and to be more available, and to be more adaptable, be rust. I'm thinking about the rocks, the water, the wet sands, the wood, the experience of the hunt. When I go to the beach, I start to notice the world around me differently. Objects now remind me of the healthy parts of life, such as the surfing, the dunes, rocks, the bonfires, the food, friends, the family. I'm thinking of 7 total pieces in this series and decided to work beyond my established process, to go back to the design room, study, review, and inspect. Build the work up. What else is missing? Can I clearly see it now? My daughter and I, when needing to escape and find clear thought, we like to go to the top. We like to see further than before to find answers. I see my work growing into new forms, testing and pushing the boundaries of the unknown, methods of madness. Risk-taking is everything to me when I'm creating, building, forming, shaping, mixing, smashing, tool making, just freelancing my work to different levels, to new levels. For me, this provides a detailed look at more clues, textural surfaces, intriguing colors, swooping lines of geometry, exactly what I've been seeking within my own practice. So my Josh notes and caveat to building the slides for today: why not build a world such as Josh? He is pioneering before his time. Listening to him explain his personal narratives while discussing work gave me great hope for building my future, my very own response to an unknown situation, similar in ways to him. So here I am today, blasting off for the next journey that lies ahead. I would like to thank Josh personally for the selection to participate in this event, along with the collaborative efforts of the Renwick and Center for Craft groups. What a joyous year to celebrate glass. I felt like it was time to start looking closer at new worlds. When I look at this new work, I feel lifted, a higher sense of spirit, out there in the world of glass, floating around the rim. I'm feeling refreshed and a new sense of hope. I hope you are too. Even though it may appear to be a delicate world right now, I encourage you to skim the outer rims, to skyscrape around the soft valley of blues, feeling lifted well above the colliding worlds below.
Geoffrey, that was amazing. Thank you so much for that insightful presentation. And I love that, Josh's work is inspiring you as you look backwards to, in a way, move the glass field forward. So I want to thank both you and Josh for your wonderful insights and conversation this afternoon, and invite Rebecca Ravenel to give a final farewell. Rebecca?
Yeah, I'm really sorry we have to go because I could spend another couple of hours
Thanks.
watching you guys work. But yeah, I just have a couple of comments and summary comments. So first of all, I love that Josh is asking Geoffrey, like, how'd you do that? How'd you do that? Because this is sort of exactly why we wanted these pairings, because it really shows that back and forth between, past, present, future, which is exactly what we tried to do here. So that's terrific. And I just, I'm really loving the fact that Josh is sort of going to the outer limits and his work is like ethereal, light, and cosmic. And Geoffrey's going to sort of the inner limits and his work is heavy, dark, and kind of, but you've both found this commonality in your forms and processes and love of, use of hand and all that. So they're both really so important to experience. And we're really glad that you could share all that with us today. I really thank you for doing that. And thanks to everybody for coming. And I just want to, two things. I want to mention that because it's Josh's big 50th anniversary in the field, he has a lot of special things going on, which you can find on his website, including a big exhibition and a book that's coming out, which you can get it from a couple of different places, Amazon, etc. But if you pre-order it through him, you will get a signed copy. So you can go to his website, which is joshsimpsonglass.com, and check out all of that. So thank you again to Geoffrey and Josh for really wonderful talk and studio visit. And thanks to everybody. Hope we see you again tomorrow.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you.